Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, you know we're going to cover all the home teams, the New Orleans Saints, New Orleans Pelicans. We'll talk about the LSU Tigers. Hope to get it to the Tulane Green Wave as well. And our guest tonight, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports, and he can talk it all. Looking forward to the next hour. We start this show a little bit different than we normally do. Today is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Of course, New Orleans had a big part in World War II with the Higgins boats, and of course now with the World War II Museum. We've talked about it pretty much on my radio show today. I'm sure everyone around this nation has, in some form or fashion, talked about the great men and women that sacrificed so much for us in World War II. Truly the greatest generation. And it's pretty amazing when you start talking about some of the things that they were able to do, how young those individuals were that went to war, how young they were on the beaches of Normandy and D-Day. And of course, the women of America that again, on a dime had to change, from raising a family and being a mother to, again, being part of the rebuilding of the war machine. It was an incredible time for this country, and something that has never been forgotten. And today we celebrate the 75th anniversary of D-Day, and those that lost their lives in World War II and those that have given so much for our freedom and freedom around the world. So again, kudos to everyone that is in the military, that's had friends or family serving in the military, or again, those that lost or again has served in World War II. And then we start on a sad note today, as again, we've lost two cultural icons here in the city of New Orleans. Everyone knows that on Sunday, Leah Chase, the queen of Creole cuisine, passed at 96. And that is a huge loss for the city of New Orleans. And of course, those of us that love the culture of this city, whether again you're into restaurants or you're just into New Orleans, she was the grande dame of food, but she did so much more for this community, from her work within the civil rights movement, to again making sure that African Americans in this town had a chance to be able to go out and have a nice dinner at a beautiful restaurant, Dookie Chase. Also, again, what she did once she received an opportunity to be a celebrity. Always giving back to our community, always never about her, but always about New Orleans, always about helping others. And Leah Chase will definitely be missed by all of us. And then, of course, today, the passing of Dr. John Rabenak, of course, one of the musical icons in this city. And I can say right now, my all-time favorite New Orleans musical artist. Again, incredible musician. And again, an ambassador for the city of New Orleans. And of course, his music will live on forever. And again, so a tough week for those of us that live in New Orleans, love New Orleans. Two icons pass, Leah Chase and Dr. John. We turn to Sean Fazende. Sean, I know, look, between D-Day and of course everything that went down there, and again the 75th anniversary there, the entire country now kind of eyes on that. And of course, here in New Orleans now, losing two cultural icons in 1 week. Very, very tough week for us. Yeah,
you kind of, history just comes right at you, pretty much all in one day or over the span of a few days. And I actually, it's on one of my final saves tonight on Fox 8 Overtime, I discussed Sean Payton's awareness of the D-Day holiday or D-Day milestone of 75 years, brought his team to the D-Day Museum instead of OTAs for that final day. I'm with you though, because I saw a few pictures today, and I'm a history guy. I love history,
So do I.
and especially history that's connected to New Orleans. struck me how young these kids were.
Unbelievable.
I mean, these kids, they were literally asked to go save the world. And they did it.
Yes.
A lot of them did it voluntarily. And then you hear some of the stories. You see the romanticized version in Hollywood and the movies, but I mean, to really watch some of the History Channel stuff where it was not an easy operation. It didn't go as planned at all. It was a day later than it should have been. Some guys were getting out of the boats and they didn't realize how deep the water was and was sinking because they had hundreds of pounds of artillery. They had, So, look, if they hadn't done that, who knows where not just America would be, but the entire world right now would be. And so you just got to stop, pause. It hit me today for whatever reason. I read everything I could get my hands on today.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I'm with you. I see your tie right there, very patriotic. I see why. And as far as Dookie Chase and Dr. John, look, you didn't have to. Look, if you're New Orleans, you know him, and that voice of Dr. John, and then that sweet persona from Miss Chase are two things that'll certainly stick with me. I
mean, again, that New Orleans tickling of the ivories with that Dr. John that you hear, that little boogie woogie on the keys, again, never forgotten and been passed on from musician to musician. Dr. John didn't originate it. Again, he just perfected it. And you mentioned the youth of those that served back in World War II, because that's one of the things that really struck me. Growing up, and I grew up, and again, I was born in 1960, so I got to know a few World War II veterans in my lifetime because they were around. A lot of those individuals in their late 80s, early 90s now, but how young they were, and to hear stories growing up of 16-year-old kids lying to be able to get into the military and going off to war, and 16, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. Heck, Sean, 16, 17, and 18, me and your dad's playing basketball at the playground, right? I mean, we were in high school together. Never once did we think about, again, the possibility of maybe, again, going in and becoming a man and going to fight for our country. Quite the opposite. We worried about, again, when was the next day we were going to play a game. Yeah. So just a complete difference in the generations. One of the reasons why, look, I don't think we say it lightly, the greatest generation.
And they were. And they absolutely were. What they did to set the tone for America, and I guess its place in the world, if you would. You can't overstate it. I mean, how important that generation was in days like today. You certainly remember, and kind of at least it made me pause for a minute and really let it settle in, because there were a few radio shows talking about it, and they were getting emotional, and it connected with me.
Yes.
It went back to the youth, 17, 18, 19 years old.
Crazy.
And you're storming the beaches, and you're in a foreign place, and fighting Nazis, and could you imagine? No.
It's hard to imagine. Fighting on multiple fronts. Again, obviously in Japan, in Africa, and also again in Europe. So just an amazing generation, and something that I think not just my generation, but the generations after me need to strive to be once again. I think we've forgotten that.
I completely
and the
agree.
sacrifice that they made.
There was just a patriotic tone to that generation, and I hope we see a day where that comes back. Let me just say, I hope we see a day in this country where that comes back.
No doubt about it. Some great things happened in New Orleans. I know, again, tough week for us. Leah Chase passing, Dr. John, but you're on the committee for the Saints Hall of Fame, and I talked about it on my radio show today. You and I discussed it as well. I think, it can be difficult for those classes. I'm sure you guys get back in that room, and there's a lot of debate on who ultimately gets in, who is worthy of being in the Saints Hall of Fame. And but this one, absolute home run. Not just because Reggie Bush, Marcus Colston, but also for Kathleen Blanco, the governor of Louisiana. In the aftermath of Katrina, doing my radio show, where again it kind of switched from sports to recovery talk, I didn't say a lot of kind things about Kathleen Blanco in the aftermath of the storm. I thought that from a political standpoint, the infighting between the state and the federal government on who was going to come in and who was going to take over the recovery, who was going to come in and do the rescues, I think that delayed things a bit, and there was some missteps there. But there was not a misstep when it came to the rebuilding of the Louisiana Superdome.
It was the best thing she did.
There's no doubt about it. It really, if you look at it and you say to yourself outside of the state, wait a minute, you're rebuilding a stadium that, again, people died in, there was so much strife and despair. Why are you doing that? But if you understand New Orleans and you understand, again, the culture here and the type and with the people, and then what the Saints meant to this city, what football meant to this city, and of course, again, overcoming the aftermath of the largest man-made disaster in the history of this country, aka Hurricane Katrina, what that dome meant, what it means now. You could talk about the historical skyline, the St. Louis Cathedral, the Cabildo, you could talk about the French Quarter, but again, you want to talk about the modern skyline of New Orleans, it's the Superdome. And again, that means a lot to those that have grown up here, those that live here. And Kathleen Blanco, again, taking federal money, putting it into the dome when a lot of people thought that money should have went elsewhere, getting rid of all the obstacles to be able to make sure that dome could be completed in the time it did. Doug Thornton, there were a lot of other people involved in that, but she deserved the credit for that. And I just thought that of all the inductees you've had over the years, there have been a lot of great Joe Gemelli Award winners. No one is more deserving than Kathleen Blanco. And this is from someone that was very, very critical of Kathleen Blanco. I know she enjoyed the award. I know you're going to talk more about it, but home run for you guys on the committee.
Yeah, and this was the first year she came up because you got to be, someone has to nominate you for the Joe Gemelli Award. And there's been a few people on there that I have fought for to get that award that's been on the ballot for a few years. But Kathleen Blanco came up this year and she rose to the top. That was actually probably our most intense debate as far as who gets the Joe Gemelli. Not because someone did or did not. It was basically who deserves it the most right now. And we went with Kathleen Blanco. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. No one paid a bigger political price for Hurricane Katrina than Kathleen Blanco. She couldn't even run for re-election. I mean, Ray Nagin got re-elected. George Bush at that point he was not up for re-election, but still he was comfortably in his second term. Kathleen Blanco paid the ultimate price. Now, that's not why she got this award. She got this award because of what she did with the Superdome. And I thought she said it best when she said, and it really struck me, that building after August 29, 2005 was such a sign of despair. But if we got that cleaned up, that could be the sign of hope. So when you come to the city every day, you see a building that's finished, refurbished, not messed up with the roof open and half painted, and that matters.
Yes,
that matters. It's psychologically, that matters. So we went around the room, we talked, we voted, and she was the one that got the votes. There'll be other ones that get the Joe Gemelli Award in years to come. I felt like it was, when I talked to Doug Thornton for our 10-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, he put it in perspective to me. He said, Paul Tagliabue, Tom Benson, and Kathleen Blanco deserve all the credit for the Saints and the Superdome being back open as quickly as it was, because it was the NFL that really wanted to push it.
Yes.
Okay? It was Tom Benson that had to basically take a leap of faith and say, okay, I'm going to bring my team back here. And it was Kathleen Blanco that had to fast-track everything to get the things going, at least from the state and federal side. And look, they had to work together, and that was a couple. Those three sides had not always worked together in things, I don't know, ever. So they got it done, and New Orleans in the state of Louisiana ended up being better for it, so we felt like she was deserving winner. Colston and Bush, too obvious. That was two of our easier votes.
We'll talk about Bush first, because again, you want to talk about the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and again, how it changed as much as the Superdome came back, it really helped the psyche of this city. But also, again, you talk about Reggie Bush and what he meant being the first-round pick for the Saints in 2006. And we talked about it today. A lot of us remember those days. Some people were displaced. They couldn't get back to the city. Some people were coming back and forth trying to be able to get their houses in order. Some people were living in trailers. Some people were living in the top floor of their houses. And it was a constant grind. Home, figuring out where you're going to put your kids in school, where you're going to have a job. If you had a business, trying to restart your business. Saints football gave people a respite, an opportunity to step away from again, everything that was wrong with your life in the aftermath of Katrina to something for at least 3 hours a day on a Sunday that you could get away from and forget. And by the way, the Saints were pretty darn good that year. They went to the NFC Conference Championship.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about Reggie Bush, because he is deserving as well.
No one could have brought that kind of juice. No one could have brought that kind of excitement. And it all just lined up perfectly, because at that time, and really from August 29th until, the drafting of Reggie Bush, that era, that 6-8 months, whatever it was a drag. And I'm telling you, I was one of them. people rethinking, okay, do I want to go back to New Orleans? People rethinking, okay, your life changes in an instant. Do I go back? Do I rebuild? Okay, I'm back rebuilding. It's just such a grind. I want to give up. I'm done. That happened a lot. I mean, people were, depression. It was just a bad vibe, despair, hopelessness. And all of a sudden, this all-world guy falls on the Saints' lap, and it's like it's God's intervention. And I just happen to believe that had that not happened, had there not been the Saints, I'm not sure this city is where it's at right now.
I agree.
As quickly as it was. And it's still, certain parts took a long time to come back, but still, that jump-started everything. And I don't think any other person, short of another famous person in the NFL, could have come in and provided that kind of lift. It wasn't Drew Brees. It wasn't Sean Payton.
Right.
It wasn't Mickey Loomis. It was Reggie Bush. That in and of itself was enough to kind of catapult everybody to get to the finish line of this thing.
And you're so right, because I want everybody to think back. Nobody knew who Sean Payton was. Sean Payton was an assistant coach from the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, nobody knew what his deal was. Okay, whether he was going to be a great coach or not. Drew Brees was an afterthought. He was a guy that couldn't even throw the ball in training camp. Some people, again, really liked him from his time at San Diego, but I don't think anybody foresaw, again, a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback.
2 good years in San Diego. 2 good years.
Right.
Not a Hall of Fame years.
Right. So again, it was Reggie Bush. All of a sudden, that got this fan base excited. Not just the fan base, but the citizens. Didn't matter where you were. Okay. And when the Saints were able to come back, and of course we know it went down there. From Tagliabue to Arnie Filco again. Pushing the envelope, trying to get the Saints back. Tom Benson acquiescing, coming back to New Orleans. Again, you mentioned jump started. Think about this. If the Dome doesn't come back strong, there is no Super Bowls in New Orleans. The NCAA championships in men's football and basketball, women's basketball as well, and of course, again, the NBA All-Star Game. For a city that really was the tourism, that our economy is based on tourism, it was needed and necessary. Plus, it was free publicity to show the rest of the world New Orleans is back. And not just that, to also show the world that New Orleans is still in need. Because when, as you know, photogs come down, reporters came down, they came down and they covered the teams that were in these big games, but they also came down and they went into other parts of the city that were still struggling to come back. And it also gave America and the rest of the world, the message that New Orleans still needs help. So from the Dome, bringing the Dome back, to having the Saints back, to again then getting Reggie Bush, it's all the cards aligned. You call it divine intervention, I will, whatever it was. What a great day that was when ultimately we found out Reggie Bush was going to be a Saint.
Yeah, and it was one of those, is this real? Is this really happening? And I happened to catch up with Sean Payton at the press conference. And I was curious. I said, well, who was the pick if it wasn't Reggie? Because he said we had this list and this. We presented to Mr. Benson the night before. I said, who was the pick? And it wasn't, because I thought he was going to say Mario Williams. Right. He said A.J. Hawk.
Wow.
Now, A.J. Hawk went on to have a good, solid career and probably could have been a middle linebacker here for 10 years. Sure. And we felt like we needed a strong Mike linebacker on defense. But he would not have provided the same juice Reggie Bush did.
No doubt.
And it's just funny how the cards just kind of line up this way. And he said that there was even talk when they found out Mario Williams was going to go to Houston about trading the pick.
Right.
And Sean Payton said, if we do that, that's the worst decision this organization will ever make. We've made a lot of them here. So, look, it all fell into place. Reggie Bush provided that. I don't think he had a great career, but he had what he was needed for. I think he provided that times 100. Right. I just don't think anyone else could have been that kind. 2 hours after he was drafted, season tickets sell out and been sold out ever since.
Right. Sean, you and I have the same mindset with Reggie Bush. A lot of people say overrated, again, didn't do what he needed to do in the NFL.
Had a great rookie year.
Right, he did. And also, again, a guy that wasn't an inside runner. You and I have talked about this a lot, and I think we agree on this. It was more what Reggie Bush didn't have to do. He was a decoy in that offense a lot. Defenses had to respect where Reggie Bush was on the field at all times. And it opened up other parts of the offense for Drew Brees.
And look, maybe you can make the case that Marcus Colston benefited from that.
I would say yes.
We'll get to him in a second. Yes. But there's a tape I remember watching from Reggie Bush. They were playing the Baltimore Ravens, so no slouch defensively, and he runs like kind of that little flare route he'd run out of the backfield. And you just pause the tape, and it wasn't like Drew pumped it to him. You pause the tape, you look across the sideline, across the line of scrimmage 4 Ravens defenders are heading in his direction. That's the kind of respect that he got from opposing defenses. And it opened up a lot of things for a lot of people. So I thought that was an easy pick, much like Marcus Colston, who this unknown wide receiver out of Hofstra, who the day he was drafted, look on the Saints website, it said tight end Marcus Colston.
Right.
Comes in, and I just think more than anything else, he was the type of receiver that ran the exact routes that Drew Brees excelled at throwing. And they just had great synergy from day one. And I remember that first touchdown he scored against the Cleveland Browns. They said it was kind of a Harvey route, they called it. I don't know exactly what the concept was, but he catches it and had 72 career touchdowns, great body control, never made a Pro Bowl. But think about that. The number one offense in the NFL for 10 years that he played, the number one receiver never made the Pro Bowl.
Never made the Pro Bowl.
But you know what? Doesn't even phase him.
No, just doesn't.
I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'm good.
Great teammate. Again, a guy that came to work every day. Played through injury and was dependable. Drew Brees got in trouble. You know where he was going. He was looking for Marcus Colston. And really underrated. Not just underrated with his peers in the NFL, but even coming out of college. I love the story that Peyton told at the Hall of Fame ceremonies about Colston, and you can maybe relay that to everyone about watching him in training camp from the first week to then the next month, and then realizing, wait a minute, we got our split end.
Yeah, and at that point they were done with Dante Stallworth.
Right.
So they were really looking to hope. They were hoping someone would emerge, and then steadily, surely, Colston just kept showing up. And this is when he bombed his rookie minicamp. I mean, out of shape, just bombed his rookie minicamp. Mike Haas, the guy that was drafted the round before him, was actually outshining him at rookie minicamp, which goes to show you just how important rookie minicamp is at this point.
Of course.
But he just kept going and steady to the point where, I'm a first-year head coach. I know he's a 7th-round pick, but that's my starting wide receiver. And you know what? He was right.
Yep.
He was right.
Yeah, no doubt. Seeing that Sean Payton seemed to press all the right buttons, especially when he first became a head coach. He knew what he wanted to do, knew his system, knew the type of players they could work in the system. And then, of course, what Colston spoke about at the Hall of Fame ceremonies which is so true of Peyton, and really kind of been a hallmark of his time here as coach in New Orleans. Doesn't matter where you're chosen.
Yep. Everybody gets a chance. You're in that door, you got a chance.
Right.
You perform on the field. I don't care if you're a 7th-round pick. I don't care if you're an undrafted running back and we traded up to get a running back in the 4th round like Pierre Thomas and Antonio Pittman. You outplay the guy, you're getting on the field. And that's held true. That really has held true throughout the Peyton regime. Right. That's not just lip service.
No, I would agree. So many people ask me, I'm not on the committee, you are, about the process. For those that don't get a chance to be in that room with you guys, talk about the process. What is it like?
I think I was asking Fletcher about this. How many are on our committee? I think it's about 17. Okay. So we all get together. We have a lunch. It's one of my favorite days. And we're able to nominate whoever we feel like, who's eligible, who's this, who's that. Now, first few years on the committee, the timing was more of Hazlitt guys. And now we're really getting into Peyton guys. So that this is going to get really interesting over the next couple of years. We all get together. We vote. We go around the table. We give our talk on why we think player A, player B, player C deserves a chance. We vote, and then add up the totals. I can tell you, me personally, who I voted this time around, who came close, was a guy like Jabari Greer.
Okay.
He was a guy that, when you compare the resume, I thought, okay, he's got something. So I think he's going to get in eventually. I don't know when. I got to see who's coming up next. But the problem we're running into, and Juan and I talked about this on our podcast, now we got, for instance, Roman Harper was brought up. I love Roman. Is he a Hall of Famer? John Stinchcomb, Scott Shanley, Scott Fajita. They're these guys that were really good glue guys, very solid contributors. Are they Hall of Famers? Because we've got some obvious ones like Reggie and Marcus, but where do we draw that line? That's our next challenge going up ahead.
Well, again, social media buzzing over the last 24 hours. Some are saying the entire team needs to go in from 2009, the entire Super Bowl winning team. Some can say yes, some can say no. It will be tough over the next few years for you guys to kind of decide for who's deserving and who is not.
Yeah, and it is, and that's the challenge we're confronted with. But we'll do it. We'll vote. We'll talk it out. We'll vote it out. It's a pretty democratic process.
Yes.
We vote and we take it. I can promise you guys this: we take it serious.
Yeah.
We take it very serious,
right.
our role in this.
And again, for those that don't know, maybe a few names out there that are involved in the process. We all know Kenny Trahan.
Ken runs it.
It runs it all.
Does a phenomenal job with that, just
right.
kind of from, because it's a lot of moving parts.
Right. No, it is.
I'm trying to think. What are the names involved?
Fletcher, Ed.
Well, Fletcher, Ed, myself, Juan, Larry, Triplet, Roe, AJ from Biloxi.
Right.
It was I think Doug might still be on it. Doug Mouton.
Right.
And Renee.
Okay.
NATO.
Yes.
There's a few others. I'm forgetting
right.
names, but those are. That's most of the committee right now.
What I get, and what
Brian Alley Walsh is on there.
Brian
Les
Walsh,
East.
Right. Les East. A nice mix of people that have been around.
Generations.
Right. Because there are some that you won't remember back in the 60s and 70s. But again, these guys either were watching those guys during that time, or again later on covering those guys.
And some of the names are still on the ballot.
Right.
Are guys from previous eras
yes.
that obviously are fresher in the minds of some other ones as opposed to some newer guys.
At first, when they first had the Hall of Fame, here, you start thinking, okay, Saints Hall of Famers, right?
Right.
But over the years, I think that the fan base has really embraced this. Give a lot of credit to Kenny Trahan. It's been a labor of love for him. Again, he's done a great job with it. Now, again, they're finally putting some money into the Hall of Fame with the expansion and everything else that's going on there. And again, folks, if you haven't had a chance to see it, you need to get out there and see it. It's a long way from when it was in Rivertown, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's at the Superdome now, and it's to me it's cool as a fan to have that
right.
that piece
absolutely.
of history. And look, like I said, coming up here, very familiar players. If you're a younger fan, are going to start getting in.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. We're going to jump into some Saints football. Talk a bit about OTAs minicamp that's coming up. We'll get into Anthony Davis again. Again, the possibility of that trade. We know that again that's going to happen probably within the next 2 weeks, I would say. We'll also talk LSU baseball. We'll get into some LSU football as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. Normally in the beginning of the show, we ask our guests to tell us a little bit about what they're involved in, the station they're with, or the publication they're with. We didn't do that tonight because of talking about D-Day and the passing of the late Leah Chase and Dr. John. Sean, tell us about Fox 8 Sports, because you guys are kind of dipped into all realms here.
Yeah, our new venture is this podcast where we've got 22 episodes in. Be sure to download, subscribe, rate, review, all those things that you do for a podcast. We're trying to get our numbers up, and we've got a great response from that. We kind of enjoy doing it. It gives us a chance to breathe a little bit and just talk.
Yeah.
We have our Fox 8 Overtime show, which will air Thursday night tonight. If you're watching it live at 10:30 on Fox 8.
Sunday night, folks.
Sunday night we have our Jeff Duncan's with us tonight. Final Play at 10:30. Our Final Play app, and then we're all over social media, so we got a full plate.
Yeah, and again,
and it's not even football season.
Right. Download the apps too, or the Tiger Huddle app, or again the Final Play app.
Yeah.
A lot of great information on there. Plus, you can get the podcast there as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about OTAs are tough. It's T-shirts and shorts. And it's very difficult to be able to say, who's doing well, who's not. It's basically what you're taking from the classroom to the practice field. Do you know your plays? Are you in shape? But you guys got a chance to see Teddy Bridgewater extensively the other day. Talk about that.
Yeah, that was something that we were not expecting to see, and we saw it, and I'm glad we did. Drew Brees was not there, dealing with the jeweler lawsuit deal that he's dealing with, according to reports. But it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. A, Drew's 40 years old. Maybe, he can certainly take an off day. And B, it was the first time that I recall. I know he played the season finale, but that was kind of a hodgepodge group of the true first-team offense, Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. And it was a practice that included a lot of team periods. So there was a lot of stuff to look at, a lot of good, if you're a coach, a lot of good tape to grade, if you will. There were 14 periods. It was very competitive. I thought the first red zone period, he was average. I thought the first team period, he was really good. I thought the second team period, he struggled. And I thought the final red zone period, I thought he was red hot. So to me, though, I think in my blog I said a B to a B plus would be the overall grade I would give it. But to me, he looked like a starting quarterback in the NFL. And my first thought was, well, what did these other teams not see when he was available? I mean, that is a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL right there. And I don't know if he's as prolific as Drew or will ever be as prolific as Drew or where he's going to, how he basically takes over and how this offense looks with him at quarterback. Right. But I saw a competent quarterback that was making right decisions. Now, look, when the Saints did their blitzing period, I thought he was a little off, thought he got a little jittery, a little inaccurate. But the red zone period, he looked really good. And I thought he was a guy that, for our first time seeing him, put in a solid day's work.
Right. Based on OTAs, anybody stuck out to you? Because then I want to kind of get the mini camp and what you're going to be looking for.
Did anyone stick out? Based on the positions that I think you can stick out at OTAs, the guy that I like the most is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the rookie.
What do you like about him?
For his safety, he's got very good man-to-man cover skills to the point where I'm not even sure it's accurate to call him a safety. I would almost say he could play outside corner. He played safety at the OTA. He played the deep half, but he could play nickel. That's probably his more natural position. And if you had to call on him to play outside, I thought he could do that as well. He covered so much green on this over route that Austin Carr ran. Austin was on the left slot around the hash mark, ran the over route to the opposite sideline. If you can kind of visualize what I'm talking about. It was a throw. He undercut it, knocked the ball away. That is a ton of green for a cornerback. That's what I'm talking about. Good. That is sticky man-to-man coverage, a lot of green where even great cornerbacks in that scenario are probably going to give a little ground and then catch up when the ball's getting there.
Yes.
He stuck to him the whole way and made an easy PBU. So if you're asking me my star right now that I think is going to translate to training camp and regular season, it's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
What are you looking for next week in minicamp?
I mean, the same that I always look for. Does the competitive nature still go? The fans will be there unless they, cut it short or rain out. So the fans should be there. That should make for a competitive environment. Keep that going. You don't want to have that feeling that their bags are packed. I'm about to hit summer vacation. Yes. As long as they kind of work this thing through. And I think that's been a good sign because I thought the first week was kind of business-like, kind of matter of fact. But the second week, it really picked up. And I thought this past week, it picked up even a few more notches. And I think team periods allow you to do that because it feels like a game. But I just kind of want to think more of the same. But Eric, I did this kind of, and I've never done this roster kind of evaluation. I was looking at the 90, and I started writing down names that I think have a better than 90% chance of making the roster. And I got north of 40. So you're talking about a team that's pretty set at this point. I've never done that experiment before, so I don't know what it was in years past, but we're talking about 8 or 9 jobs that could be open. That's it. That's how I think you're pretty sure about what you have coming in 2019 season.
That leads me to my next question, and I've been getting it since Gerald McCoy signed with the Carolina Panthers. For those that don't know, Gerald McCoy cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, about a $10 million salary. They cut him loose. They end up signing Ndamukong Suh. He goes to the Carolina Panthers wanting to stay in the NFC South. He turns down more guaranteed money from the Baltimore Ravens.
And it's the Ravens.
Right, okay. than he did with the Carolina Panthers. I believe it was like $8 million guaranteed with the Ravens, $4 million guaranteed with the Panthers, but an $8 million contract. I get the questions constantly. Why not go after Gerald McCoy? And what I've said thus far is, well, they've got to be able to pay Michael Thomas. And they've also got a situation where they've got a defensive end as one of the top 5 defensive ends in the league in Cam Jordan, and he's being paid as the 19th best defensive end in the league. And how do you bring in a guy and pay him $8-9 million when you're not taking care of your own? Peyton had some interesting things to say about McCoy. You asked him that question specifically. Talk a bit about what Peyton had to say and your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I just straight up asked him. I said, did you guys have any discussion? He kind of just shrugged it off. Nah, not really. We've invested heavily in that position. We like where we're at from a numbers standpoint. I'm sure the price tag came up to the point where they didn't even want to consider it. Look, I think Gerald McCoy could be a nice addition to this roster. I think he could be as good of – I don't think he's the same player he once was, but I still think he could be as good as any defensive tackle currently on this roster. But you gotta talk about money. You got to talk about fit. And you've already made some investments there. So didn't shock me that they really – it was kind of, okay, he's available, okay, but we're gonna stick with what we have. I don't think it's the worst move. Look, if they'd have known he was going to become available – and was available maybe earlier in the offseason, maybe they go out and get him. But at this stage of the game, they just didn't feel like they had much interest.
I asked you this on the radio show today. For those who didn't hear it, $8 million on the cap right now. What do you think the Saints are going to do with that money? Is it, again, looking for maybe a veteran that is released or a veteran that maybe make a trade at a position where they feel like they need to be upgraded? Again, do they need that swing tackle guard on this team right now on the offensive line? Do they need another defender down the line on the defensive line? Is wide receiver something they're going to have to look at if, again, some of these young players don't emerge? Or is this a situation where you're banking that money because you got some contracts coming up and maybe you redo some deals?
Well, that certainly could be that can certainly be an option. I don't think at this stage of the game you're going to sign anybody that's going to eat up the majority of that cap.
True.
I mean, I know there was some cornerbacks that came in. I couldn't imagine those guys coming in and getting an $8 million contract or anywhere close to that, taking up that kind of space. So I really don't know. I just think you have a little bit of wiggle room, and normally you're right up against it at this stage of the game.
Yeah, that's the interesting
so
thing.
Maybe can you carry a little bit over? Perhaps. Can you go ahead and get now that the kind of the free agent wave is cleared, and even the guys that you may pick up on the on the way into training camp would not really damage that $8 million money. Right? I mean, maybe now was the time you really turn the page and get to Michael Thomas's contract. You look at Cam Jordan's extension or Cam Jordan's redo. But look, I got to say, Cam Jordan, I think he deserves more money, but I don't think the Saints are under any obligation to do that. I would do it because I want to keep my star player happy, and he's one of the best ambassadors for the Saints. Man. But if they say 2 years left on your current deal, we're going to wait, I don't know what else you can really do at that point unless he wanted to hold out. He didn't strike me as that type.
And it doesn't seem to be that type, no doubt about it. Let's shift gears to LSU baseball. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, it was Hoover Magic. And of course, what they did there, they get the Baton Rouge Regional. They go undefeated in the Baton Rouge Regional, beating Stony Brook. A lot of people scared of Stony Brook. And of course, USM twice. Southern Miss, give them a lot of credit. What a gutsy club that was. Baseball America, and I talked about this last week, called the Baton Rouge Regional the toughest regional in America. And LSU went through it pretty easily. Before we get into the Super Regional in Florida State, what's going on? What happened? You were in the box. Yeah. You saw what happened last week. This is a far cry from losing 5 in a row. Losing midweek games to Louisiana teams.
Oh, it was ugly.
This is a far cry from that.
And I remember, was it Ryan Terrio on a radio show out in Baton Rouge really kind of went on a rant.
Yes.
Someone pointed to the Arkansas Game 3 victory. Yes. I look at the 17-inning till 4 in the morning marathon in the SEC tournament as the turning point because I think they kind of learned they were resilient. They lost that game, but still they battled. And to turn around on a 4 hours of sleep and win that game, and I think that re-energized the fan base because I think that kind of allowed the fan base to fall back in love with this team a little bit. Because sometimes the fans get frustrated, especially in Baton Rouge. Yes, they get a little frustrated. They've been spoiled, but then all of a sudden. Okay, I think we're going to get hosts now, fans I'm talking about. And then that box was as intense and as packed as I've ever seen it.
And you were there.
I was there, and I was a little bit critical of the lack of attendance this year. There was a lot of highlights that we did where there was nobody in the outfield. I mean, nobody in the outfield. So, that was not the case at regional. I felt like you can feel the intensity in the USM game, particularly that 5th inning when Matthew Beck gets the strikeout because I think everyone in the stadium felt like they get the hit right there, they blow the game open, and it was man on man, mano y mano, and Beck got the job done. And then all of a sudden the baseball gods cut you a break and Florida State defeats Georgia, and lo and behold, you're not just going to Super Regionals, You're hosting. So the road was not a straight line. It was all the way around. But in the end, you ended up right where you were supposed to end up.
Where were they supposed to be? I talked about it on the radio show. I've talked about it to anybody that will listen. Maybe a little bit overrated in the beginning
very
of the
much.
season. Okay?
Not very much, but they were overrated.
They're overrated. And then you're expecting guys right out of high school to make an instant impact in the SEC. And oh, by the way, Louisiana baseball is pretty darn good. Okay, and then you're, again, if you can be critical, maybe a little critical of, again, those guys that were drafted to go to the major leagues and they wanted to come stay and maybe they didn't have the best of years. And then they were beset by injuries. I mean, sore arms with the pitching staff.
Well, I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
I would agree.
Deeper than what it is right now.
But
anyway, go ahead.
It got pretty bad because, again, then you had individuals calling for Paul Manera to be fired, which is mind-blowing to me.
Not surprising. You know, he's a little bit of the Les Miles. You know, he's done a lot, got a lot of resume. Except I would argue that their resumes are pretty similar. Except I would argue he probably has had a more run of a little more dominant in the SEC as opposed to Les Miles was. I thought Les, had a great run through the SEC but then obviously he dipped in the back end. But still, he's their one. Like anytime it's always getting older now. And I remember the one thought was, well, his dad died. He's a little distracted. He's not. And lo and behold, he kept the team together, made some good moves. But I got to tell you, Eric, the way they won the regional is, to me, because you've been trying to figure out an identity with this team. I think that was it. Okay. But it doesn't happen every week. Baseball is a weird game.
Yes, it is.
It is. The way they won was, it was pretty clean. It was efficient pitching. It was bullpen you're going to have to rely on.
Yes.
That was clean. And then timely hitting. I think that's their formula for success. They don't have an alpha dog on the mound. They don't even have a Poche type on the mound this year. Every year they've done something. They've had a Nola, they've had a Gosman, they've had a Renato. They've had, even the year they won back in 2009, they had Coleman.
Yes.
They had those. I don't even think they have those type of guys right now. So they're going to have to kind of piece this thing together, and hopefully the depth of this team will shine through. But I don't know. It was just one of those things where once you got into the postseason, and if that postseason was at the box, anything could happen, and lo and behold, anything has happened. Yeah,
and of course, again, Florida State, Saturday, right now, first pitch at 2 p.m., Sunday, first pitch at 5 p.m., Monday would be the final game if necessary. That's a 7:30 first pitch, all on national TV. Look, Mike Martin, 47 years at Florida State, player, assistant coach, now head coach. They're going to be motivated, Florida State, to be able to come into the box, get him to the College World Series and maybe beyond. I looked at the stats on these teams. Very similar. Okay, very similar. But you mentioned it today on the radio show. Give a little bit of edge to their pitching staff, right? Florida State?
Yeah, I think LSU's a little deeper, and I think they got the box, which is something you can't underestimate. But I think they've got starting pitching that, to me, supersedes LSU's. And if you get a guy that gets hot and is on fire, and LSU starting pitcher can't match that, I think that is their path to victory. Now LSU has a little erratic lineup, but a deep lineup. They've got the box, and they seem to have a little bit of mojo right now. But so does Florida State. They were not supposed to go into Georgia and win.
They went to Georgia and won, right.
So I think, look, I think it's going to be a good series. I really do. I think it's going to be, and the Martin thing, I think that's hey, let's rally for our guy. But I don't know how long that's going to carry. I think that might work for the first couple innings of the first game. But I don't know how far that carries into once the game gets rolling. You're really into the science of the game.
It'll be interesting to see. Again, look, you mentioned clean. They got to play clean.
I think that's just do what you're supposed to do. Make the proper baseball play. Right. And I think that's the way to win.
Yep, no doubt. Again, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is our guest tonight. I mentioned this last week because this is kind of a big deal to LSU football fans, especially in the offseason. Not on primetime CBS this year. They'll be airing the Georgia-Notre Dame game on September the 21st. It's not when we look at LSU and you look at 8 straight times losing since the game of the century, when it was number 1 versus number 2 in Tuscaloosa, they lost 9-6. I think it's still a marquee matchup, but I don't think it's the matchup that that has been in the past. And I think that if LSU fans are upset right now about not having this game in prime time, I would just say to them, beat Bama.
If LSU fans are upset, they need to look in the mirror and realize that the team is not, they're not on a level playing field right now. And to me, I would be sending CBS thank you notes right now, because the build-up to this game, when you're not on the same level, but the build-up is still the same, like you were two powerhouses back in 2011. That was when this all started, back in 2011. Is just not, it's gotten too out of control. I mean, last year I was struck by how much the campus was alive, the pregame hype, the talk, the videos, and then the first drive of the game, Alabama just steps on the field, methodically goes right down the field and scores, and it's just like, and all the adrenaline that was there, just, you know how it is when you get really jacked up, and then you exert the energy, and all of a sudden it's like, I got to catch my breath. It just went too far. So I think the build-up to this game has gotten worse. I mean, it's gotten bigger and bigger while the teams have not been on equal playing field. But all they would have to do is play a close game. Just play a close game, and that game is back in primetime next year in Baton Rouge. Right. But CBS, they did what they had to do. They're going to get Georgia, Notre Dame.
They're going to get Notre Dame.
When's the last time they had Notre Dame on CBS?
Right. No,
so, look, to me, I think it's the perfect thing for this phase of LSU, Alabama. LSU considers Alabama their biggest rival, but Alabama does not consider LSU their biggest rival, although it has become that. It's probably their second biggest rival, maybe third. But still, I think from where the programs are at right now, this was the best case scenario, especially since you got to go to Tuscaloosa this year.
Right. Your thoughts on as we get a little bit, we're right in the middle of these kids that are going to summer school now up at LSU. A lot is expected of this team with Joe Burrow this year. The addition of Joe Brady, we're hearing about the great the change in the offense, returning starters, etc. What's your gut?
I like this team. I really like this team. I think 10 wins, 10-2 is the absolute floor. I think 11-1 is probably a fair expectation.
Schedule sets up nice for them.
Now, Dan Mullen seems to have a way with LSU.
True.
But they get to come to Baton Rouge this year. Look, the A&M game was what it was last year, but still it's going to be a tough game. But I think they're as good as any team in the SEC, with the exception of Alabama. I think the Texas game is going to be so crucial early on, because I think Texas is another team kind of on the come up, if you will. So I like where this team's at. You mentioned the change in the offense. It's funny because this is what my life has become now. I watched a bunch of LSU full games over the last couple of weekends. I think people forget just how much they were in shotgun and 3 wide receiver sets last year. 75% of the time last year. But it's the way they attack defense is going to be different. Quicker passing game, 4 wide receiver sets, less heavy max protects. So
hopefully.
And look, let me just say, I like Joe Brady. I think I remember him with the Saints. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but I remember kind of just nodding to him in hotels when I'd see him in certain situations. He's got the confidence, he's got the swagger, he's got the age, but he ain't coached the game yet as his passing game coordinator. So let's just see what happens.
Right. On the other hand, again, a lot is expected of Tulane this year with Willie Fritz. We got another recruiting class for him, coming off a really good season. A lot of people feel Tulane's going to take the next step this year.
Yeah, look, they got into a bowl game, obviously. They were able to be successful. I think you're on the right trajectory with Willie Fritz. I think if you look at the steady growth, and you and I both know, I was very disappointed in him after week 1 last year. I mean, I thought it was it is time. You have got to stop playing this little brother thing.
Right.
Well, now I think they've kind of, and now you got your 4th recruiting class in, competing, which is, to me, a very underrated conference. I think it's a very good college football conference, and it's a tough one for Tulane to compete in, but they're doing it.
Right.
So I think another bowl game is certainly on the horizon.
And of course,
Tulane.
getting McMillan back for another year too. That's
helps.
That's going to be huge for them. Much like having Burrow back with LSU.
Yeah, absolutely.
To have a starting quarterback with experience under their belt now.
And he's the guy the full year this year.
Right.
He takes over from day 1 this year.
Yes, and I think that will mean a lot going forward. Let's grab a call, and then we're going to switch to the Pelicans. Toby is in Gardiner. Toby, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Toby.
Hey, Eric, the Cam Meredith injury, does it call into question the Saints medical staff again? And also, does Gail Benson still have a small portion ownership in Fox 8? And I'll hang up and thank you.
All right, thank you.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, Benson's
the Fox 8. I don't believe so.
Raycom now.
Gray Media now.
Ray Media now, right? Because there was a merger.
Yeah, Gray Media now runs Fox 8.
Right.
The first question about Cam Meredith, look, I'm with you. His lack of health is a disappointment. He was not out there again. First week he was out there doing stuff off to the side with the trainer. I saw him in the locker room Tuesday, but obviously wasn't healthy enough to go. Look, is it a miss by the training staff? Possibly. I mean, the Bears said basically felt like he was not worth it. So we'll see. And look, that to me he's been a disappointment because you got to get healthy. I mean, you just got to get healthy and be on the field and be available.
That's still the biggest question mark for me going into this season.
Here's where I'm gonna take a detour from that because that was mine.
Right.
But after watching Jared Cook, I think he emerges as the number 2 receiving threat.
I get that, but I'm talking about the receiving core itself.
As a number 2 full receiver,
right.
But you know how Peyton runs his offense. I mean, pass catching tight end, you can work around that.
Right.
But I do think that's a concern. I just don't think it's going to be the huge void that it was last year. Because last year it really showed up after the Dallas game.
Especially after Ginn went down.
Absolutely. Well, after the Dallas game, I thought they were just a different offense.
Right.
So, and look, Kamara's going to still catch 70 passes.
Right.
I think Jared Cook catches about 60, 65, and obviously you have Michael Thomas.
How do you think that works with Kamara? Because, again, he's got to prove that he can be durable with the number of touches they're talking about giving him. Do you think those touches will expand, or do you think that it's a situation where, it'll be pretty much what we've seen throughout his career?
That's a great question, because this is as kind of luck would have it. I went and looked because, I thought he had a lot more touches last year. He scored a lot of touchdowns, but I don't recall many big runs. So I went back and checked. He only had one run over 20 yards last year. And he did a lot of the tough work, a lot more tough work. But to me, it's a balance, okay? And a lot has to do with Mark Ingram being out the first 4 games of the season and Taysom Hill kind of emerging later where they didn't use Mark as much. But to me, that's a give and take that you got to be mindful of, because if you wear him out, are you taking away a little bit of his explosiveness? Because that was part of the reason, that was what made him so good in 2017, lightning in a bottle.
Oh, yeah.
He only had 44% of the snaps his first year. So I do think that's something we'll figure out when we watch them in training camp, is the utilization of Latavius Murray, and does he take on a bigger share of the carries, and how much do you ride Alvin Kamara because he's such a Swiss Army knife?
Who's going to be the physical back for this team?
Well, look, Latavius Murray is big, but I wouldn't call him a physical runner. He is a downhill guy who likes to run the outside zone stretch play, which is something the Saints have not done a lot of. So you have to incorporate that into your offense. There's Allen was his last name. They signed him recently. The guy I like is an undrafted guy, Devon Ozigbo, is a guy who really catches the ball well in the backfield and can really move. So I think that's to be determined. And depending on how the numbers shake out, you could see them taking a third power back if necessary.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. That's going to be another battle in training camp. Well, David Griffin has pressed all the right buttons. I give Gail Benson, as we talked about the last time you were on, a lot of credit. Going out and give the absolute best candidate to run the basketball organization. Vice President of Basketball Operations, David Griffin, he hires Trajan Langdon to be his general manager, a guy that could have been the Vice President of Basketball Operations as a number 2. I don't think you can get any better than that. When you talk about Aaron Nelson, bringing him in with all the problems this organization has had with the training staff and injuries, again, another home run. They get lucky, they literally hitting the Powerball, getting a Zion Williamson. David Griffin and Rich Paul and Anthony Davis met last week in Los Angeles, and Davis reaffirmed his stance that he wants to be traded at this point. So again, we heard this week that David Griffin is now taking offers for Anthony Davis. A date you have to remember is the NBA draft is on June the 20th. The leverage is all in David Griffin's court right now. That leverage will be will lessen if they don't get a deal done by free agency, because then players start to move. You'll see what the chess pieces are, and you may not be able to get as much for Anthony Davis as you would have if you can get it done pre-draft. With that said, first of all, your thoughts on the hiring of David Griffin, and then we'll kind of get into your thoughts on what has to happen here. I mean, is this a situation where there is a sense of urgency now?
Yes.
To be able to get this thing done and get it done within the next couple of weeks? Why don't you take it from here?
We're in that window now, and frankly, we've kind of been building up to this window where, okay, we all know, okay, Davis was never coming back. He was, and look, I actually applaud Griffin for doing the professional thing and talking, getting in front of him, presenting your case, knowing that you probably don't have a less than 10% chance of him changing his mind. But still, hey, we all knew it was going to happen. I think bringing him on was a sign that they're taking the Pelicans as serious as they take the Saints. I never felt comfortable with Mickey Loomis running both franchises. And look, just in conversation and just in things you pick up, I'm not sure he was confident or comfortable in that role. He kind of did it as a favor to Mr. Benson. So I think having David Griffin at the top and Trajan Langdon, who both interviewed for the same job, and you get both of them?
Right.
But still, that's great. But still, you got to execute the deal in place. And if I am a guy like David Griffin, this is the type of deal that can make – I mean, you already got your career job, but that can really catapult you to one of the top executives in the NBA. And you already kind of got a soft landing, if you will, because you got Zion in your back pocket.
There's no doubt.
We talked about baseball gods earlier. The basketball gods kind of shine. And to me, when things line up like that, sometimes it's a sign you're doing things right. Because sometimes good luck kind of follows, good fortune follows teams that are doing things the right way.
I agree with that. Again, it will be, when you look at where they are right now, and I would agree with you, they needed a face of the franchise to replace Anthony Davis. There's less pressure to get the face of the franchise now because Zion is the face of the franchise going forward. Jason Tatum has been a name that's been out there. Obviously, he would still be a great addition, but the pressure's not on for you now to bring in a quote-unquote Jason Tatum type. Although, again, I do believe they still need a face of the franchise. Look, he will be judged, and he's got nothing but bouquets from everyone in this market, myself included, and rightly so, based on what he did in Cleveland, based on what he's done thus far in terms of his hires. But he will be judged on the Anthony Davis deal. He's got to get the maximum value for Anthony Davis, which means, again, whether that be another star or a star in the making, again, another maybe a veteran player that can come in that will be one of your better players on the roster. And then, depending on what you want to do, if you want to go with young players that have experience or you want to go with draft choices, whatever he decides the direction he has to go, he's got to get a quote-unquote Herschel Walker deal for Anthony Davis.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. And I'm also curious the approach he takes, because what you get for Anthony Davis will be a sign of what they see. Is it a build for everybody wants to build for the long haul. Everybody wants sustained success, but is it sustained success while also winning this year coming up, or is it going to be draft pick route, younger player route,
and build
and let them kind of grow together and become that team eventually? So I think there's a lot of different storylines, a lot of different factors into play with this deal coming up, because it says a lot about where it sets your franchise up, and B, it kind of sets the tone for the direction they're going in terms of where they want to be presently and in the future.
Anthony Davis is worried about Anthony Davis, but again, I'm sure Rich Paul and David Griffin has had this conversation. The best thing for Anthony Davis and the club, going forward, to get the best deal, let me take this back. The best deal for the Pelicans is for Anthony Davis to opt in to his second year, so that a team is at least assured to have him for 2 years, much like Kyrie Irving did for the Boston Celtics when they traded for him. That's going to be one of the keys going forward. If he is insistent on, again, not opting in, well, then a lot of teams are going to take a flyer, much like Toronto did on Kawhi Leonard, and hope that they can hold on to him the following year. That may hurt ultimately what you get in return.
But look what happened with Kawhi. I mean, so sometimes it's worth the gamble.
Yes, it is.
No, I don't. Kawhi takes over games a lot more than Anthony Davis, at least in my opinion.
Ever.
I mean, so it's not exactly the same in terms of apples to apples there, but I think that gives teams at least a little bit of ray hope. Well, if we only have him for a 1 year rental, if we're a contender, maybe we can cash in on this 1 year.
Right. And I think you can, because I think Anthony Davis is easily influenced. Now, if Clutch is all about getting him out to L.A. with LeBron, then it is what it is. But this is the window now. The next couple weeks, this is the window.
I still think a mystery team is going to get involved in some kind of way.
Well, I do too. I don't think
we're not talking about right now.
I don't think it's just necessarily going to be Boston or the Clippers or, again, the Los Angeles Lakers. I think there will be. And I think there also could be a multiple team deal involved here as well. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, thanks so much for being with us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night, and always at ericasher.com. You can listen live, download the podcast of my radio show at ericasher.com. And also you can check me out on the radio. That is noon to 2 weekdays on Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeart Radio app. Again, special thanks to Sean Fazende for joining us tonight on the program. Make sure you check him out at Fox 8 and the Fox 8 app, the Final Play app as well. Also, special thanks to WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.